Hello and welcome to this first video on hips, one of my favourite areas of the body to stretch. We'll be looking at both external and inner hips, and in terms of props, all you will need is a yoga block or a blanket or a cushion if you don't have a block. So let's get started. Come onto your seat and bring yourself in a cross-legged position with your right leg in front of left to start. And so this will be where you will pretty quickly identify whether you need a prop to sit on. So if I show you from the side, if already in this position you feel a little bit like you're hanging back in the spine, then that may be where putting something underneath your seat will help you to get that pelvic tilt, just so that you are more able to come into a forward fold shape. So have a feel, see if you need that prop or not. And then when you're ready, take that deep breath in and start to ease your body forwards. So it doesn't need to be a great big forward fold. Listen to your body. If you are tighter of hip, then you may be a little bit more upright. But in this shape, and again, just seeing that from the side, you'll see that I'm not massively forward folding on this side. In this shape, you should feel a nice stretch into the outer hips, and potentially you will also feel it as a stretch into your lower spine as well, which should also feel really nice. So take a deep breath in, deep breath out, let it go. And I find particularly because the hip structure is so big and there are so many muscles and ligaments connecting in and around, that it can feel really stuck. You can feel really frustrated in your hip stretches. And so particularly I find by fueling each one of these stretches with a very deep breath just helps me to relax and soften into the pose. So as your body acclimatizes, you might find a little bit more space, but try very much to keep your sit bones grounded to the floor. Spine can be long or rounded in this version. Ordinarily, if this was a yoga practice, we'd probably say to have a nice long spine. But if you're treating this very much as a post-workout stretch, then just feel just do what's good for you, what feels good for you after your workout. I like to sweep a little bit from side to side, particularly when I'm feeling stiff. I feel like I'm giving my body time to move in and out of that stretch a little, rather than just, very abruptly coming into stillness. So for your cross-legged position, you can be here for as long as feels good. Nice and soft through the knees. You could also pad up your knees with blankets or cushions. And then let's have a feel second side. So just lift up, take a nice deep breath in, and then switch across your legs. Deep breath in and fold forwards, deep breath out. Noticing perhaps the difference on each side. And so your hips form two completely separate pelvic halves. So you very well might notice how one side feels much more open, and maybe you can see that in my body, where on the left side I feel like I have a little bit more space to come further forwards. And so you may feel this into the left hip, you may feel it into both hips. You'll feel it where you feel it, as long as you don't feel any pain in the knees, for example, in which case you would take something a little different, something more supported onto the back. So just if that is you, let me just briefly demonstrate. You could take this stretch here and just change it to an ankle to knee pose if this causes any kind of twisting or torquing into the knee. So let's take a couple more breaths. Again, a really great one to be in for as long as those hips need you to. And so a lot of the work that we're doing in our workouts is of course squats and lunges, and they can certainly make the hips feel super tight. Also, if you have a stationary job, a job where you're sitting at your desk quite a lot, again, you can end up feeling really tight in the hips. So this is a real simple but great one to do for most bodies. Let's come up. Just take a moment, unwind those legs. You can stretch them out in front of you. Just feel like you pedal through the knees and give those knees a little bit of space, because in that pose and the next couple that we're going to do, you're holding your knee into quite a strong degree of flexion. So let's just extend those knees for a moment. And then let's move on to our second second stretch. So coming into a pose that sometimes is referred to as 90-90, and so I'm bringing that left shin into a parallel shape to the edge of my mat, flexing this foot. Some of you will also want to take the right leg back. Again, there's the 90-90 degree, your thigh and your shin bone. For me, I find this a little bit too much for my back hip. So to make it easier, I just bring that right knee in and I focus a little bit more on just the front leg. So if that's you, then you can take this modification with me. So keeping the foot flexed will mean that the ankle and the knee are in a nice safe alignment. Take a deep breath in and then very gently bring yourself forward. And again, you don't have to come too far forwards here. And so very much feeling this in my left seat, my left glute. And there's a tendency in this shape to want to roll off a little bit to the left. So I'm grounding through this left hand just to steer my upper body kind of squarely over the front of that shin. That just helps me to get the connection into it. If you feel that you have more open hips and you want to increase the stretch, you could start to angle yourself towards the front foot instead. That just increases the stretch. Otherwise, stay upright and breathe and just be where you're at. Of course, you can come a little further to the floor if you wish. So let's take a few more breaths. And you'll find particularly with the hips that there will be this urge to stay in the stretches for a while, much more than perhaps you would do in a shoulder stretch. The hips feel like they just need a little bit more time to open. You're working with bigger joints, bigger muscles. And then come up. And then switch yourself second side. So that right shin, I'm bringing parallel to the edge of the mat. Roughly, it's a 90-degree shape. Again, maybe back leg also is 90 degrees, or like me, bring it in a little bit. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Once again, there's a little bit of a push through that right hand to keep me tracking forwards, to keep me connecting into the hip stretch, rather than just rolling off it. Yeah, so you'll feel nothing per se over here, but with torso lying in front directly over that shin, then in goes that stretch. Full breath. As I've talked about in other videos, just making sure neck stays long. Shoulders roll back. There's a little bit of degree of work, of course, going on in this supporting arm, but just try not to clench that shoulder towards the ear. Keep nice and long here. You'll perhaps note on this side, which is my tighter hip, that my knee is lifted. You could, if that's you, also grab your block or cushion and just give your knee a little bit of support. That's a really nice thing to do for the knee. So it's there if that feels good. Just a couple more breaths on this side. Again, in your own time, feel free to hold these for as long as you can. And then let's come up and release and just come to shift onto all fours. So the level up, I would say, or a progression of that 90-90 stretch is in a pose called Pigeon. My yoga friends might recognize it as being called Pigeon. If I demo for the left side first, so from all fours I guide my left knee and I just take it behind that left wrist, and that leg is for me a 45-degree angle. From here I then lengthen back through my right leg, and then this might be where I stay. Again, you'll see that there is a bit of a space between seat and floor. So to support that, I will often prop my hips with the block, just so it doesn't feel like it's hanging around in mid-air. It gets a little bit of a sense of now I have something to ground and drop into. I might stay upright depending on how my body feels, or I might come down onto the forearms. Now this pose for many doesn't feel nice on the knee. Again, you're holding it into quite a strong degree of flexion here. So if that doesn't feel good for you, then my guidance would be to come either into back into 90-90 or into the one prior, the cross-legged pose. Other versions that you will see of this, and again it's very similar to the principles of 90-90. I would roll off the hip, but then I would open my leg once again into that 90-90 shape. So there's now much more space behind the knee. And then again, similar feeling to 90-90 is a little drive through this left hand to bring me over the shin. So you can take whatever version, you just want to make sure it feels nice. Again, also you could lie onto the back and do reclined pigeon or the figure 4 shape. So all that talking done, yeah, all that outline done, just let's stay here and breathe for a few more breaths. Shoulders again soft, neck is long. And another really nice one to be in, if it does feel comfortable for you. It literally seems to get right into the very depths of your glute muscle. So arms up, yeah, if you've had enough on that side. Gentle ease back. And if you need to take a moment just to extend that left leg back, just breathing in a little bit of space again behind that left leg before you move into your second side. And then let's set up for round 2. So right knee behind right wrist. Again, for me, I have a 45-degree angle. It's nicer for my hips and my knee. I inch back. And my body, my upper body, my torso is very forward facing. Hips are square here. And then release and fold into second side. Again, taking any of the modifications. If you have a more open hip, you would take that moment just to bring that leg more towards a 90-degree angle to sit very much up and fold forwards. Yeah. Let the breath go. Often there's the urge just to exhale through the mouth, just to sigh out some of the frustration and the tightness that we feel around the hips. Let's take a few more breaths onto this side. To lift up, once again, just a gentle transition onto all fours. You could of course transition back to downward facing dog. Extend the right leg out, breathe space into the back of the right knee, and then come to take a comfortable seat, potentially on your block. And let's move into our next pose that just moves into the inner thighs. and inner hips. So you've done quite a lot. The last three poses were very much your external outer glutes. Now let's start to bring the stretch into your inner thighs. And of course it also just gives a moment for the knees just to feel open. So come to sit on the edge of the block for extra height. Extend those legs. They don't have to be super wide. Take a nice deep breath in. Your spine is long. This could be where you stay. You could also have your back against the wall for a bit more support. And of course you could also lie on your back with legs up the wall in a V for even more support. But for this version, upright. Maybe a little tilt forwards. So just listen to hamstrings, listen to inner thighs. It can feel a little bit pinchy behind the knee. If that's you, or if even with a block you're rounding back, then my guidance would be to just bring the feet in a little bit and bend the knees and take your forward fold like so. And you're still going to feel it into the inner thighs. I think we have this pressure that these stretches or these poses have to look a certain way, and they don't. All that's important is that you, for your body, are getting a nice stretch. Again, fuel the stretch with the breath. Those of you more open, it might be march further forwards, forearms to the floor perhaps, grabbing feet. Staying nice and grounded through your sit bones. A few more breaths. And then gently bring yourself up. And often with this pose, just to come out of it, I like to literally pick the weight of that leg and just guide it in. It's just a bit of a sweeter way to come out. So you've worked on outer hips, we've had a little look at inner, and so now let's look at the front of the hip. You may know that as your hip flexors, again through seating a lot. If you have jobs that are a little bit more stationary at desks, hip flexors get super tight, and so let's have a feel. So step the right foot forwards. You could pad up the left knee if you needed with a blanket. And then come to, for now, stay with fingertips to the floor. And so you're likely to feel this front of the left hip. This will be your hip flexor. And of course you may also feel it right into the inner right thigh as well. And so little sways from side to side if it feels okay, if you feel that it gives your body the opportunity to drop in. And then you could change this, the intention of this, just by bringing the right foot back a little bit. I've now made that lunge much shorter. So you come up to lengthen and tuck your tailbone underneath you. Now this is very much purely into the front of that left hip flexor. I've taken it out of my inner thigh here. So breathing here. And so maybe a combination of this one and the first lunge will be nice. And then let's have a feel for that second side. So I'm taking you through these relatively quickly, just as these videos are more a bit of an instruction. We'll bring a full video that brings all of these into almost a proper class. You'll find that in other videos. So let's come to bring left leg forwards. Other versions of this, of course, is to heel toe that foot out to the side and you feel you can drop in a little deeper. Again, some of you might come all the way to forearms to the floor or forearms to a block. Otherwise, stay upright, lengthen and breathe. Let's shorten the lunge, heel toe that foot back into the midline if you took it out, to come up, shorten the stance, lengthen the spine, tuck the tailbone, and then feel the stretch just purely through the front of the right hip flexor. One more inhale and exhale. 2, release. And let's come to finish by sweeping those legs around. Come all the way onto the back for me. Let's come into a little bit of inner hip again, just to finish. So let's start to take some nice knee circles. Of course, this is also working on mobility of your hips. It's a really nice one to do, both as a warm-up to a workout or as a cool down. So take a couple of circles, you can go in, maybe you do a few pushing out, and then take those knees apart, and you are very welcome just to stay here. So just hand is placed to the top of the shin, in goes that inner thigh stretch. For those of you who want something a little different or a little extra, you could take a hold of the outside edge of your feet. Elbows are to the inner knee. Knees are deliberately bent. Feet are flexed into happy baby pose. You could of course play with just half happy baby pose and maybe get a feel for this pose in each leg at a time. Otherwise, feeling full happy baby. And rather than feet being together, we're trying to open them out, almost as if you were in a squat. Shoulders roll down the back. You'll feel how your tailbone wants to lift. Keep trying to lengthen your tail along the floor. So you're trying to get a sense of grounding through the hips. So whether you be in happy baby or whether you be in a slightly sweeter version here, it doesn't matter. Let's take 2 more breaths wherever you are at. And then release, gently draw those knees in, hug them in, and then take a moment just to completely rest. So palms up, take a little shake through the hips, and you should feel, even just through testing some of these stretches, you should already feel this sense of opening through the hips. Hopefully it feels good in your body. So let's take a couple of breaths, deep breath in. Let it go from the mouth. Again, deep breath in. Legs super heavy, hips super heavy. And exhale. Gently draw left knee into the chest, right knee into the chest, and then come to push your way up to a comfortable seated position. So hope you found those little demos useful. Pick any of those, pick all of those, be in them for as long as you wish, and hopefully that brings some relief around your hip joints. Thank you.